All right, everybody, welcome to episode 104 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL with my main man, Bill at Super Duper Flex, and the co-host with the most, Drew at DR_PRA. How you guys doing?
Doing good, man. Another week, another COVID scare. It doesn't seem like every player went on COVID the last week and a half, and like we really didn't have anything before that, or maybe it's just my brain.
All these dang Halloween parties.
Yeah, it's something, man. Even one of my employees, close contact. So yeah.
Oh, so one of your employees is hanging out with Aaron Rodgers and Saquon, huh? Just the partying it
right.
up. Yeah, I mean, it has seemed like the last 2 weeks or so has been, it was kind of Devontae Adams. Then a day later was Alan Lazard. And I mean, yesterday we got Noah Fant, and today we got Aaron Rodgers and Saquon. It's just kind of like, man, it's kind of jumping all over the place. So I wish that was the craziest thing that we could talk about this week, but I don't even think that makes the top 10 in the NFL news cycle. So we'll get into it, and we'll kind of talk about all of it as we go through our good, our bad, and our ugly of week 8. We're halfway there, fellas. All right, Bill, why don't you start us off this week? Hit us with something good.
Yeah, I was debating between two players from the same team because I'm not sure who I should give the credit more to. But I picked Mike White from the Jets. I mean, he just his completion percentage was 80%, something like that. 37 for 45. My math is not good in my brain right now. 405 yards.
Sounds close.
Yeah, there we go. 405 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. I know he wasn't the he didn't look exceptional, but he did what he had to do. And, for a guy who had never started before and he looked awful, I think that a lot of people were he was still available in some of my Superflex leagues this week because everybody's like, yeah, it's not even worth it. If Zach Wilson can't do anything, why should we add him? Well, I mean, he's been around for a while. He's probably become one of that consummate backup that's, doing his job and, can play for you a few games. Now, granted, teams are going to figure out what he can't do and shut him down, I'm sure, at some point. But first starts are always interesting because you just don't know what you're going to get. You can get a Peterman or you can get like something like this. So, good for him for stepping up and doing his job. Granted, I know like most of his passes were short. I was going to select Michael Carter just because like everything went to him. He had like 10 catches or something like that for 100 yards. And but I had to give it to the guy who had never started before.
Yeah, man. He had a couple of throws that were spot on. One got called back for a touchdown that looked like it should have been. And then he caught a touchdown too, right?
Oh, yeah, I think they did run a trick play where he went out and caught a touchdown.
Yeah.
I think so, or caught a pass at least. Yeah.
Yeah, so he did everything.
Yeah, that's a great one because, like you said, in some Superflex leagues, he was on the waiver wire definitely before this week, and he still made it through the waiver wire in some other leagues. I think I picked him up for free in a league and ended up trading him right away for a 2023 third-round pick. And I was like, so that's easy money, man. So, yeah, I love that one. Drew, why don't you hit us up with a good?
Yeah, I thought about it last week, but I figured I'd give it a couple of shots here, and they came through again. The Manning cast on ESPN2 did not disappoint. It's not just because Josh Allen came on this week. They were good for all 4 segments. Last week, if you didn't catch Marshawn and Tom Brady on there, you missed something special too. But just as close as you'll ever be to being a fly on the wall while you have a couple of guys that have have seen some things, just talk it through. And it looked like they were a little looser this week too. They were just giving each other a hard time about different things, and it was good. It was a lot of fun to see Strahan on there, and yeah. So whenever I get a chance for Monday Night Football, I'll be on the Deuce.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think I think the first week I watched it was, I think that was week 3 when the Cowboys played the Eagles on Monday night. And I was mad at myself for not finding it sooner and watching it. They're so good. They have so much fun. Not only were they both high-level NFL quarterbacks, but they're brothers, so they have that dynamic too. They bring on, guests from all over the place. Not only football, but I know LeBron James was on one week. They had Jon Stewart on this week. They go everywhere, and it's really just it's almost like if you went to one of their houses and you were just sitting around with them talking football. They're loose. It's not, having to regurgitate a bunch of stats and where somebody went to school and all this other stuff that they have to do on the big channels. So, yeah, I love that one, and I love Manicast too. If you haven't seen it, Monday night, I don't even know who's playing. Who cares? Just watch them. It's entertaining as hell, and you won't regret it.
Totally, because like as I was talking to you guys beforehand, was right when I saw what Drew put for the good, I was like, oh my God, that's a great call, because this week was the first time I tuned in, and it, like, you don't really, you get mad sometimes when you listen to regular announcers, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, like, just, I understand why they do it. I understand that they're, catering to everybody, but when you're somebody who's a little bit more of a diehard, it's just so cool to hear people talking a little bit more in depth, and, two guys who've won Super Bowls, and they're actually pretty, you see a little bit of personality. Like, I always thought Eli Manning was like just like a completely dry, personality, but he's ribbing his brother about how he's eating and stuff like that. It's just hilarious. And like, did you even take a breath during that whole time you ate that chicken? And it's just cool. And so he's doing. That's really doing something for him in my mind, just because like Peyton's always had that a little bit, where he did all the commercials and just a little bit more of a personality. But this is, I think Eli's really benefiting, but showing his, like, his personality as well.
Yeah, I love that show. And like I said, if you haven't caught it yet, ESPN2, same time they do the whole Monday night telecast, and it's a blast to watch. All right, so my good was Tyler Lockett. I think we dug his grave and buried him in it after Russ went down. We said it's Geno Smith. Geno Smith isn't good, and Tyler Lockett is going to be is going to feel that more than any other player on that team. And he came out this week, 12 receptions for 142 yards. He got targeted 13 times, so he went 12 for 13. And I think Geno only had like 20 attempts or something like that. So they all went to Tyler Lockett. Listen, this is what Tyler Lockett does. He makes you love him with a game like this, and then next week it'll be 1 for 15, and you will kick yourself for having to start him. Luckily, the one league I have him in is a league where I am forced to start him every week. So I don't care. I love these weeks, and I don't even get mad about the other weeks because I have no better options. But yeah, that's my one, and I'm just glad he had a good game with Geno Smith. It looks like Russ is right around the corner to return, so hopefully that just boosts his stock. All right, so I'm gonna hit the bad here. Sorry, Drew. This is no slight to you, but Zack Moss, 8 rushes for 19 yards, and he kind of saves the day if you play half PPR with a 6 receptions for 39 yards. I think a lot of people loved him as a low end RB2 or a high end flex, playing the Miami Dolphins this week. And that was just such a weird game because nothing really happened until the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden there was this fourth quarter explosion. Josh Allen ended up being fine. And, but Zack Moss unfortunately didn't get any of that shine. And I think that's a guy that a lot of people were kind of eyeing up and were very happy to start and it didn't pay dividends.
Yeah. Yeah, I started him in one league over Michael Carter.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So Bill's good hit you in the feels a little bit because a lot of those pass attempts were going to Michael Carter. So,
yeah.
But I feel you, man. Drew, why don't you hit us with your bad?
Yeah, another guy that let me down in multiple leagues. I actually had two here. Picked the tight end because of the premium that's in a lot of these leagues. All I needed to have was like 2 more catches, and I would have won, I think, 2 more leagues. But Noah Fant, 2 catches for 8 yards, and now has COVID. So week doesn't get much worse than that. Wish he hadn't caught the COVID and caught a couple more passes instead. Justin Jefferson was a close second for me in a few leagues as well. Somebody I thought might have a little bit more going his way on Monday night. But yeah, both those guys let me down and cost me a couple of games, which I thought I had them wrapped up going into Monday night. But here we are.
Did you brought up Justin Jefferson. I don't know if you guys saw the tweet from PFF where Justin Jefferson's on the field and he's wearing a Michael Myers mask. And they said, what was it? I think it was 12 receptions for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns incoming. And I didn't see the original tweet. I saw someone after the fact quote tweet it and say the entire Minnesota Vikings didn't even do this. So that's how I actually got introduced to that original tweet. But yeah, I mean, not good for them either. But all right, Bill, why don't you hit us with a bad?
Yeah, the bad for me was a veteran NFL coach calling 2 timeouts in a row to potentially screw the game up, but helps your team. So I think you're okay with it. But Mike Zimmer calls timeout on two before another play had started, and you can only call 1, but he would have luck boxed if they didn't allow it and never even acknowledge the timeout. But once they stop the play, it's a delay of game. And so he's a little unfortunate, but he also needs to be aware of what he's doing, especially in those moments.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Bill, I'm not mad about it. That was a weird game overall. Just not what I expected. Was not expecting a Cowboys victory with Cooper Rush behind center. But hey, everything worked out for the Cowboys, and we move on now. And seems like Dak is doing more in practice than he was doing last week, and looks on track to play. So I'm fine with that. Bill, why don't you hit us with the ugly?
Yeah, my ugly is Matt Ryan. I mean, what's ugly about it is he completed 20 of 27 passes for a total of 146 yards. Like, how do you do that nowadays? Like, that's just mind blowing to me. And 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. So just, he had done so well for so many weeks in a row. He was QB1, I think, for the last 4 or 5 weeks, or very close to it. And, this was just monumentally disappointing. I mean, I believe that he was in the bottom 5 of all the quarterbacks this week. So yeah, just a rough week for Matt Ryan.
Yeah, and not only how do you do that, but how do you do that with Kyle Pitts, who had been red hot for the last couple games, and Cordarrelle Patterson, who seems to have been red hot since like week 3. How do you only accumulate 146 yards? And obviously, no Calvin Ridley. He's taken a step away to deal with some mental health stuff that he's going through, and good for him. Like sometimes you just need to know that you need to take, and I don't care what your profession is, whether you're a football player or a lawyer or whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. Sometimes you need to step away and you need to get your mind right. And good for him for acknowledging that, and I hope he is getting the help that he needs. So, Drew, why don't you hit us with the ugly?
Another quarterback, and I honestly don't remember. I have to look back at last week if I said him last week. I think I did. Carson Wentz 2 weeks in a row. Last week the rain and the weather maybe gave him a little bit of an excuse, but 27 for 51, threw it up a ton of times, got 3 touchdowns, but 2 terrible picks, including the game loser at the end in overtime. He came out and he's frustrated himself, trying to do too much, but guy has been around long enough that he's got to know better than to turn the ball over and get loose with that. So, I was excited when I saw overtime because I needed Jonathan Taylor to do some more stuff. And then it was over just like that.
I mean, at living in Philadelphia and watching all of the Philadelphia Eagles games, this is the Carson Wentz experience. Sometimes you're going to love what he does out there. He's going to sling it. He's going to air it out. He's going to look nice. And sometimes you're going to wonder how he is an NFL quarterback. And that is the ride you take when you get on the Carson Wentz Express. So it's good to see that he's doing the same thing in Indianapolis. He hasn't changed at all. He is keeping true to himself. And yeah, that's Carson Wentz in a nutshell. All right, let me hit you guys with my ugly. Hunter Henry. Guy was coming into this game 4 straight games with a touchdown, which honestly, those touchdowns were saving a lot of his weeks during that span. But 1 reception for 33 yards. Like, I don't care what league you play in, full point, 2 point per reception. It doesn't matter what you're playing in, what kind of tight end premium there is. He didn't do anything for you. And, we had the Ravens and the Raiders on bye this week. So Darren Waller and Mark Andrews are out. I'm sure there's some people who said, hey, Hunter Henry is my tight end too. He's had 4 straight games with a touchdown. All right, I could be doing a lot worse than Hunter Henry. And Hunter Henry turned around and said, oh, it can be worse, I promise. And he did. And this is why, during the offseason, I think we got happy when Jonnu Smith got signed. We were like, oh man, they're going to bring the tight end game back to New England. And then the next day, here comes Hunter Henry getting signed to as much, if not more money. I can't remember. I think he might be making a little bit more than Jonnu. And you're like, oh man, what is this going to be? And both guys, besides this kind of touchdown streak, have really disappointed you. So, that was my ugly. And, I just want to bring this up real quick. I didn't want to put it in this segment because, this segment is kind of lighthearted, just kind of highlighting what has happened during week 8. I mean, that stuff with Henry Ruggs. I mean, everybody knows what happens. Drinking and driving. Going over 150 miles an hour, hit someone, hit a young woman, 23 years old, and killed her. Listen, I'm no famous celebrity. But if you're listening to this, if you hear my voice, don't drink and drive. Like, we got Uber. If you don't have a friend in the world and you get drunk, you can get an Uber and Uber will drive you home. Call a friend, call a taxi, walk. I mean, there's every option is a better option than getting behind the wheel yourself and driving your car. Don't do it. I know a lot of people have been talking about it on Twitter, so I'm not going to get on it for too long. But I did want to bring it up because I think it's something important that we all need to talk about. It's not just it's not just something that affects athletes. It's something that affects everybody. We've all, either known someone who has got behind the wheel drunk or has been in an accident because of someone who got behind the wheel drunk. So we all just have to kind of make good decisions, and that's, get an Uber, get a Lyft, whatever. Just do that. Don't drink and drive. I don't know if you guys want to say anything about that, but I just wanted to bring that up. You're muted, Bill.
It's a tough thing. I've made my mistakes in my life where I've driven when I shouldn't have, and I was fortunate enough to not, hurt somebody. I mean,
Yeah.
if I hurt myself, that's my fault, right? Like that. But, once Uber that was when I was young. And, once Uber became a thing, I mean, it just makes way too much sense to be able to use that as a service. And it's just, I mean, it costs you a little extra money, but oh my God, just keep saying, well, it saves me from $20,000 in legal fees or something like that, or killing somebody. And, it's tough. Like, it's a young person making a mistake, and it's unfortunate. And I mean, it's just and ending a young person's life and their life essentially. So it's a horrible situation. And, you just got to hope that, the problem is with youth is they're young, right? Like
Yeah.
they just don't, like, we think we're indestructible, and it, all we can hope is that, these kind of stories affect people and they start to understand, like, this, what sort of, issues you can encounter, and just to try to make a good decision. And I think that people as a whole and the society as a whole but I mean, these are the kind of stories where, there's still a long way to go. And so hopefully, hopefully people talking about this, young people will start to, and old people, start to, consider their options a little bit more.
Yeah, and some I wanted to bring up just because a lot of people don't know this. I know you guys do because we've talked about it before. But I was the victim of a drunk driving accident. A drunk driver hit me, and caused me a lot of physical issues after the fact that I don't really need to get into. But this is something that's important because listen, we've made those mistakes. I'm not going to say we've all made those mistakes because some people have done it right from day one. But I know just like you, Bill, I know that probably right around the age Henry Ruggs is, I made those mistakes, and I was fortunate enough to not harm anyone. Doesn't make it right. It just makes me lucky. And I do want to talk about it because if one person hears this and just kind of has an aha moment and says, you know what, I've done that in the past and I've gotten lucky too, but I don't want to end up in this situation. It's all worth it. So all right, we got that out of the way. We're gonna lighten it up a little bit more now. We're gonna transition into the timeline. What we do best, what we saw on the timeline. And this first one is from Jerry O'Shea at Jerry Shea FF, proud member of the FTC, the Fantasy Timeline Chat. I say it every week. If you're just looking for a bunch of cool people to talk fantasy and life with, yep, just hit us up. Hit either one of us up at our handles or hit the show handle at Fantasy Timeline. We'll get you in there. I mean, it was bumping this week between, obviously you brought up the Henry Ruggs thing, but we're talking about Derrick Henry's foot and trade. Trades are always getting thrown in there. Hey, what do you think about this trade I was just offered? And you get a lot of points of view and kind of cover all your angles, which is really cool. And so many great people in there. I don't want to start naming them because I'll forget somebody, and that will be a huge mistake on my part. But every week, I put the tweet out there, hey, if you got any questions, let us know. And Jerry hit me with this one. He said, what about that trade offer I sent you in TA2? And I go, that trade offer you sent me in TA2? I didn't get an email. Sure enough, I go into MFL, and there's a trade sitting there, and I felt bad because I hate when seems like one out of every 15 trades, MFL will just not send me the email. And unfortunately, I have T-Mobile, so I can't sign up for the text alerts. So I'm like, oh man, let me check this out. And listen, I want to get your guys' opinion on it, and maybe I'll let you guys make the decision for me whether I take this trade or I give it the boot. I have my personal opinions on it after looking at it, but I want to see what you guys think. So I would be getting in this trade Tyler Boyd, Allen Robinson, and a 2022 first. Now that first round pick is currently held by the best team in the league. So obviously it's the 112 right now. Anything can happen in the playoffs, but it's the 112 right now. I would be giving up Elijah Mitchell, Deebo Samuel, and Mike Gesicki. Now this is a trade addicts league. If you listen to the Trade Addicts podcast, you know all the settings, but if you don't, it's a 12-team Superflex PPR 1.75 premium for tight ends. Bill, I know you know the rules. Obviously, you're in a TA league. Drew, you just know the TA leagues, and I know if Russ doesn't get you into one soon, he's gonna have to deal with you. So I'll just put that out there, Russ. When you listen to this, get Drew in there. But and either one of you can start. It doesn't matter. What do you guys think about this trade?
It's a trade addicts league, so I was under the impression you have to say yes to every trade.
I do not.
I struggle with this one. I would want the Deebo and Elijah Mitchell and Mike Gesicki side. I think Gesicki's getting his targets. He's getting some nice chunk yardage. Deebo, of course, this year has been great, and I think we've always known he's talented. Injuries have gotten in the way, and kind of a crowded receiving core has diminished a little bit of his upside in the past, but he has really shown what he's able to do this year. Don't love some of the nagging injuries in the middle of the week, the last few weeks, but anytime a guy is going out there and 150 plus and possibly a touchdown, it's hard to pass that up. And then Elijah Mitchell, a lot of people now, I'll give credit where credit's due. A lot of folks on Twitter are coming back and saying they were wrong about blowing a bunch of fab on him early in the season. And the weeks that he's playing well. He looks good. So I would be more inclined probably to keep the side that you've got already, Josh, unless you've got a real need for, I guess, wide receiver. But you're younger on your side. You have a tight end that's performing on your side. And who knows what the 110, 111, 112 will be next year.
And Drew, just for a little bit of context, because you brought up a good point about needing wide receivers. One thing I do love about the Trade Addicts League is pretty much you need to start one of every position, and then everything else is pretty much a flex. So I don't think you ever really have a need for anything, maybe tight end because of the premium, but I don't think me personally, other people in Trade Addicts leagues may believe differently, but it kind of helps you to never have a need at something. Bill, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, as much as I like the players that he's offering, I just feel like value-wise at this point, it's really hard for you to accept. How down is everybody on Allen Robinson? As much as we think he's a great player, I mean, he is 29 years old. So like depreciating asset if you're doing this by value. Boyd is third option, maybe fourth option now. So that's tough. And then a late first, which you could argue Gesicki is worth. So like I mean, just because of the 1.75 and, and he is a guy who could get a decent amount of targets. I mean, he doesn't necessarily always, but I mean, not a bad guy to have. So, Elijah Mitchell, even if it's just this year and maybe it's just 3 games, who knows? But Debo is a young, he's one of those young guys that when he is healthy, he performs. And, I feel good putting him into my lineups. Before he got hurt last year, right? He was doing well, or was it the year before? I can't remember. But, and then this year he's just blown up. So I think that, it's tough to say yes to that trade. So.
All right, so I feel better because when I looked at it on its face, I said I can't accept this trade. But I thought, hey, listen, I'm going to talk to 2 very smart people about this. Maybe they see something I don't see. And Bill, I think you kind of nailed it with these the wide receiver assets, Tyler Boyd and Allen Robinson. I mean, at this point, you're probably selling them at their lowest possible value. I mean, obviously, we know everything that's been happening with Allen Robinson this year. And, Tyler Boyd, Bill mentioned, he's the 3rd option on his own team. And I put down where they rank in Trade Addicts too, just for some context. Tyler Boyd is wide receiver 34. So you go, all right, like a kind of a flex play type wide receiver. Allen Robinson, wide receiver 69. Normally you say nice, but it ain't been nice if you've had to start Allen Robinson at any point this year. So, and then the 112, we've heard since the 2021 draft was over, this year is not going to have as many high impact prospects coming out. So, what is that 112? What would that relate to in maybe the last couple of years where we've had a lot of high impact prospects come out? Is that more like a 202 or a 203 in some of those drafts? And I know you can't look at it like that. Each rookie draft is its own entity, but you kind of have to, think about what level of talent you could possibly be getting there. And so sorry, Jerry. After this is over, I'm gonna be hitting that reject button. Your best shot was to have Drew and Bill talk me into it, but they saw the same things I did. So Jerry, we talked about it, and I will be responding with that reject after the show is over. But while we were talking about my trade, Nick hit us up here, and Nick said 10-team league, full PPR. Should I trade Khalil Herbert and Justin Jefferson for Adam Thielen and Damian Harris? My answer is no. Don't do that. But Bill or Drew, why don't you shed a little bit of light and share your own opinions about why that's a good idea or why that's a bad idea?
I find it to be, Jefferson and Thielen, they're on the same offense. I just don't see I really just don't see the point of making this trade. I think that it's just, they all have their faults, right? Like Khalil Herbert, we just don't know long term. Damian Harris just never catches passes. So like Justin Jefferson's the best piece, so maybe I hold on to that. I think it's a 10-teamer, so I would want probably the best player I can get. So I think the Jefferson side is the one I would want. With that being the case, if it was a deeper league, maybe I'm more apt to go the other direction. But being a 10-teamer, I'll take Jefferson.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a little more context might help, but I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish here. I guess if you think Damian Harris maybe has the job the rest of the season, if you're hurting at running back because you're worried about Khalil Herbert losing his job once Monty comes back, that could be a reason that I could see here. And then, for this year, Yeah, I think Jefferson and Thielen probably trade games, but I would still want to have the best player in the group if I can. So I think what you gain from Jefferson's blow up games will make up for whatever you have to start at your RB2 or flex spot if Herbert's not it.
Yeah, and I love the point that Bill brought up about it being a 10-team league because I think it does. Your mentality should change a little bit, unless you're doing something crazy like starting 15 or something like that. You should be consolidating and getting as many studs on your team as possible. Because with 10 teams, obviously, every team in your league is going to be a little bit deeper and have more high level players on it because there's not as many places for the talent to go. So Jefferson, we all said it, is the best player in this deal. And, if this is redraft, I can maybe understand it. But if this is dynasty, um, we're not even positive that Damian Harris is the guy next year. I mean, we know Bill Belichick, he could end up doing what he did with tight end this year and sign, 2 free agent running backs or draft 3 guys. And we're back in the same mess we are, this time next year going, oh, it's, now it's Ramondre Stevenson and it's Damian Harris and it's these 2 rookies that they drafted. Who do we start every week? So, yeah, we're all in agreement here. Keep Justin Jefferson and keep winning games. Hopefully, Justin Jefferson in the season he's been having is winning you some games. But this next one here is from Ridley Truther at CWC Wood 1. If you're a 1 to 2 year rebuilder, are you selling Tyler Lockett or Allen Robinson for a second rounder? Also, Darrell Henderson for a 2023 first, or just keep them with 2022 handcuff / Akers Achilles insurance. So we got a lot going on here. I'll start this one and kind of break it down, and then you guys can follow up and tell me where I went wrong. But I'm not selling Tyler Lockett for a second round pick. Yes, I get it. You're gonna have weeks where he did what he did last week, and he gets you like 3 fantasy points. But you're gonna have games like this, like he did this week, where he gets you 20 or 22 fantasy points. And honestly, I mean, Tyler Lockett is most likely worst case scenario, he's your wide receiver too. I can't imagine unless you went maybe RB heavy or if it's super flex, you went QB extreme or something like that. I can't imagine Tyler Lockett being your wide receiver 1. So I'm not selling him for a second because of the boom potential he has. Allen Robinson, if it's a high second, I think I'm out. You know what I mean? Like I'm not selling him for the 2. What was this one? This was a. I thought it said the number of teams, so that's my fault. But if this is a regular 12-team league, I'm not selling Allen Robinson for the 212. But if it's a 201, 202, I could see myself. I mean, Bill made some valid points, earlier when we were talking about Allen Robinson. He's 29. Is this the end of the road? Has he hit that wall, or is it just the mess of being on the Chicago Bears? We don't know. But I think I would take a high second round pick to not have to find out. Darrell Henderson for 2023 first, do that now. If someone is offering you a 2023 first for Darrell Henderson, because 2022 is going to come and we don't know what is going to happen. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the video. I think it was either yesterday or today of Cam Akers running. And, we're already, starting to sweat and fan ourselves off about he's running. He shifted direction pretty quickly. Who knows what that backfield is going to look like in LA next year. So I would take the first for him in that regard because yeah, we don't know what Cam Akers is going to be, and we don't know what Sean McVay is going to try to do in that backfield. So I would trade it, get rid of it. If the Akers owner is going to give you a first for him, take it. Drew, what do you think about all the questions that were asked?
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page. Lockett, it's really hard. Yeah, I can't imagine he's more than a wide receiver 2. I would think at this point he's got to be a wide receiver 3 or even a flex starter for you. And that's what a luxury to have a guy that can go for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns any given week. You got Russ coming back in the next couple weeks, riding through the playoffs. Allen Robinson, I think when you start kind of putting some names to it, would I trade Allen Robinson for, Jalen Waddle or an Elijah Moore who went kind of at the end of the first, early in the second this year? Yes, please. So if it's that early and you think you can get something like that next year, perhaps. But even then, if there are that many questions about next year's draft, maybe you write it out in the offseason, see if you go somewhere else, maybe you get a little spike and an opportunity to get some more out of it if he goes and hooks up with Mahomes or someone like that down the road. Then, wide receiver has a long shelf life, especially for a guy like him who's not speed dependent, who's technically sound. So I would probably go back and forth, and depending on what mood you catch me in, I might move him for that early second. But I think my gut would say I'm going to hold on. I've had him for this long. I believe in the talent in general. So, and if you're rebuilding, hopefully you've got some other picks already. So if you don't have any picks and this is your best path to getting picks next year, I could feel the pressure to do that as well. But yeah, I would definitely move Robinson before Lockett. And then as far as Henderson for that 23 first, yes, 100% would take that. If you're in a rebuild and you're saying you're 1 to 2 years out, who knows what that first will come in to be? Who knows what you can get for that first next year once people go through that draft and they realize, shoot, I want a piece of the next one. So you don't want those points probably on your bench anyways or on your roster. So move them, take what you can get there. So I'm with Josh on that one for sure.
Yeah, I definitely Darrell Henderson. I'm moving. And if I'm in a rebuild, and when you say 1 to 2 years, that includes 2022. So if that's the case, then yeah, I mean, it's just a no doubter moving running backs, just because their shelf life so short. Typically, I'm totally down with that. And I mean, just this year, you could probably get potentially even more than that right now. So as for the wide receivers, you guys know how I feel about wide receivers as a whole. They're pretty, if you're not an elite one, you're in this, tier of a billion. So like I did misspeak. Allen Robinson's 28. He turned 28 in August. So you get another year, but what Drew brought up about, maybe go somewhere else, that had crossed my mind as well. And, but what are you really getting for him if he goes to Kansas City? Like, I mean, are you getting a late first? Cause somebody's not going to buy him unless they're a contender. And so am I going to take an early second this year or potentially a late first the following year? I don't know. I think I'd just rather take the trade that's offered to me now, be done, because who's to say that that's like a perfect situation, right? Like, we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe he decides he loves Chicago so much he just decides to stay there. So like, I mean, there's so many things that could happen. And yeah, Lockett's a different story, just because I feel like I could wait until he has a couple boom weeks in a row and people will get a little more excited about him. But at the same time, he's not a first round wide receiver anymore. So like, I'm totally fine making those moves as in a rebuild, because who's to say you're going to get that same offer down the road, and you can start churning that roster spot now by moving those players now. So I say move them all. Personally, if you're in a rebuild, and I'm cool with that, but it's all a matter of like if you feel like you can get more down the road. But oftentimes I have that feeling, and then nothing happens. So because you're envisioning the perfect situation, and oftentimes that's not what happens.
Yeah, and Bill and Drew, you guys made some really good points, and you guys talked about where he might end up next year. And I always try to tell people, don't play that game, because as much as you think player X is going to end up in this spot, free agency happens. We can use Juju as an example from this past off season. Juju was gone. Everybody said it. He was gone. He's going somewhere else. One of the other 31 teams. He's not coming back to Pittsburgh. What happens? He comes back to Pittsburgh, signs a 1-year deal. So we never know, and we can't even assume. We can assume. I think a problem we have too is we assume they're going to the best spot possible or one of the better spots possible, and we never think about what if. Let's just use Philadelphia as an example. What if Jalen Hurts is out? They end the season 5-12. They use their million first-round picks to draft a high quarterback, and they want to pay Allen Robinson a whole lot of money to give him a big, experienced target to throw to. Well, now all of a sudden we're like, oh, wait a minute. We thought he was going to go to one of these spots. Kansas City was mentioned, like Kansas City, that has a Patrick Mahomes and has Andy Reid as the offensive guru there. Oh, well, now he's in Philadelphia. So it's kind of hard to play that game, because we always think best case scenario normally when we do these things. And we too often forget about maybe some of the not so great scenarios that could happen. I mean, if he becomes a free agent, any team can sign him. He could go back to Jacksonville for all we know. And, that could be interesting. But, yeah, I'm with you. I think we all pretty much agreed on that, right? I think we were all in agreement to get rid of Henderson if you're getting a 2023 first. Maybe keep Lockett around if all you can get is a second right now, and give the heat to Allen Robinson and use that second round pick. And maybe you package. Bill brought up a good point about Lockett. Maybe you package Lockett with something else to upgrade to a younger guy instead of just getting a second for him. Package him in a deal with Henderson maybe, and get a first, and we talked about before, Elijah Mitchell, maybe something like that. And I'm just bouncing ideas. The value's probably not 100% there, but just kind of as an idea, put it together, upgrade, look at other people's rosters, and see what you can do. So let's hit the next one here. And this is a good one. I want to bring you guys in on this and see what you guys thought. From hashtag Dynasty Leverage at Charles Chill FFB, and obviously I love Mr. Chill. I always call him Mr. Chill because he is a cool customer. But Dynasty, he is Dynasty and Chill. He has Manic and Chill with Shane Manila. He does a whole bunch of stuff, and he is one of the smartest people out there doing this thing. I just listen to him and I go, man, you could sit me in front of a computer for a year with nothing else to do, and I probably still couldn't come up with half of this stuff. So I listen in awe a lot of times to him. So he said, what side do you prefer in a Superflex PPR Dynasty League? Your team is soon to be 7-1. Well, congratulations, 7-1. Alvin Kamara or the recently injured Derrick Henry and a 2023 first. So, Drew, where would you go in this situation? Are you taking Kamara or are you taking Henry in the first?
I'm not sure if I'm missing something, but I feel like I would take Kamara pretty easily here if I'm 7-1 and I want all the points going into the playoffs. unless for some unreal reason Kamara is expendable because you happen to have Swift and JT as well or something like that, and you can maybe sit on Henry and see what value you get next year. But even so, I don't know what you're going to get for Derrick Henry next year if he comes back healthy with great videos and all, in camp and everything. Maybe you're going to max out at 2 firsts instead of Kamara. I think you can still get value for Kamara next year if you want to flip him for somebody else. So I'll take the points now. Hope it gets me a championship. Then I can worry about moving things around afterwards.
All right, what do you think, Bill?
Yeah, this is tough for me. I think that basically you're getting a first. At least this is the way I'm looking at it. You get a first just for giving up points this year. So because I feel like next year you're gonna get within the same space of points. So yes, the Drew makes a good point, where the resale next year is going to be higher for Kamara, just because of, and I feel like he's going to age well just because you see all the work he does, with his core and balance and all of that. And he's never been a super fast guy either. So I feel like he could end up being one of those guys that's doing well at 28. So honestly, it's really intriguing. Sometimes you can win, without the elite guy. And if your team is 7-1 and you're doing okay, there's tons of 0 RB teams that end up succeeding. And who's to say something doesn't happen to Kamara in a week or two? So it's much more risky. But I think I just slightly lean the Kamara or the Derrick Henry and the first. Now gun to my head and I'm in that situation, would I be able to make that decision? I'm not sure. But without emotion, I think I lean that way.
All right, so one of you got this question right, and one of you got this question wrong. And Bill points at himself. I don't know if he pointed at himself because he got it right or because he got it wrong. But no, Bill, you got this one right, brother. I'm gonna agree with you on this one. It's funny because Drew said with no hesitation he would take Kamara, and Bill said it was kind of a back and forth. It was tough for him. And I looked at this, and it wasn't tough for me at all, but I took the other side. Drew brought up a good point. We don't know what the rest of this team looks like, so maybe he's riding. It doesn't have to be as drastic as a JT and Swift, but maybe he's rocking JT and Darrell Henderson. Or maybe he's just stacked from top to bottom. Maybe he's got he's got Dalvin Cook and Mark Andrews, and maybe he's sprinkling a little Elijah Mitchell in there too for flavor. So he could just be a really kind of a star-studded team. He just kind of built a super team, and good dynasty teams kind of retool while they're still on top. And this is one of those ways to do it. You get the first, you get the 2023 first. And obviously I don't know where that first will end up, but it could be anything. It could even be a boat. But then you're looking at, obviously I personally believe Derrick Henry will not play again this regular season. Now, if the Titans are still in the playoff hunt, I can see Derrick Henry, coming out for the playoffs, getting ready and doing his thing. But let's say that does happen. Let's say they make the playoffs, and that's when Derrick Henry debuts. And he is Derrick Henry. He is the guy that we have seen for the first 8 weeks of this season, including a guy, and I know his stats weren't great this week, but he ran like 20 times on a broken foot, which just shows the insane human being he is, but like how tough he is and how physical he is to be able to do that. Because if I broke my foot, I'm not even running to the doctor's office. I'm just, put me in the wheelchair. I'll wheel myself down there and I'll wait my turn. But if he comes back in the playoffs and he has one game or two games where he is, 20 rushing attempts, 100 yards, and a touchdown, he's right back to where he was to start the 2022 season. We're all going to say, yeah, he got hurt, but look what he did when he came back in the playoffs, and look what he did before he got hurt. And he's going to have very similar value. And I get a first on top of that. I'll take my chances, and and that's how you retool. Because you might only have Derrick Henry for 1 or 2 more years, but then you have that first, and you can do a lot of things with that first. So yeah, that's a good one because obviously it split us 2-1. So obviously the Derrick Henry and first side is the right side. But it's funny because Bill and I and we are two people who are used to being in the minority. This ended up with 58% for Alvin Kamara and 42% for Derrick Henry in the first. So we in the Twitter population, we are not in the majority, but on the fantasy timeline, we are the majority. So so go us.
Yeah, I think there's I think there's some concern for what Kamara's role will be now that Winston is out too. So I understand, maybe being a little looser with what you do with him. Derrick Henry is just a big human being to have foot issues. And if this is the beginning of something that'll be nagging or recurring or lead to some other issues because he's overcompensating somewhere, again, not a doctor, but I would rather keep the guy that has been healthy. I agree with Bill. I think he ages really, really well, like a Darren Sproles or something like that, and you can get a lot of value out of him long term. But it's definitely an enticing deal to look at the 23, and if he does come back, the upside is huge. But yeah, I think I'm a little bit more conservative there than you guys are. So good luck to you, whatever you choose to do. And it sounds like this person is pretty good at this fantasy football thing. So we'll assume that he makes the right decision.
I'm pretty sure he's gonna take the Derrick Henry side, just based on how how he talks about moving assets to further along, like running backs. So I'm pretty sure he'll. That's my guess, but who knows? But yeah, so but that doesn't make it right.
Bill, I think it's interesting that Drew said he's not a doctor, even though his handle is at Dr._PRA. So kind of weird for a guy.
He's talking about foot injuries.
Okay, next on the timeline here, we've got
so we have a doctor too. Every fantasy podcast has a doctor now. So we got at Dr._PRA, and please, people, just in case, we're kidding. It's a joke. Drew is not actually a doctor. He does not give medical advice. So don't,
Not even a PhD of any
not
kind.
even a PhD. Drew, what have you been doing? Come on, man. You should have a PhD. You have a PhD
I lied on my resume. I lied on the resume.
You have a PhD in this fantasy football game, at least. Come on, man. You teaching classes out here to some of these fools.
You know what PhD stands for.
Hey, we're a family show. We're not, but you know what I mean. So this one here is from Football Fanatic at football 60207-845. People, stop putting your phone numbers and your social security numbers at the end of your Twitter handles. We ain't trying to do it. It's a lot of breath on my part. He needs to fill his flex position this week, so he wants to know who he plays. This is a half-point PPR league, if that helps you at all. He wrote down the players. I wanted to fill in the matchups so that we would all have some context here. So Mike Williams versus the Eagles, James Conner versus the 49ers, Emmanuel Sanders versus the Jags, or Zack Moss versus the Jags, or Jerry Jeudy versus the Cowboys. So he's got 5 guys. He needs 1 flex. So this is an interesting one here. I think I would say Jerry Jeudy versus the Cowboys. Even though we've all kind of admired what Trayvon Diggs has done intercepting passes, the Cowboys' pass defense as a whole is not ranked very high in the league. I think they're 28th in pass defense, if I'm correct about that. So even though they will get picks and turnovers, they also give up yards. So I think I would go with Jerry Jeudy. I know his performance last week wasn't anything to write home about, but I mean he was just injured for what was that 6-7 weeks. So give him a break. Let him have another game before we just start saying that this isn't his season. So yeah, I think he's the most talented player out of this bunch, and he has a pretty good matchup. So that would be who I would go with. Bill, who would you go with here?
I think I'm going Mike Williams. I still feel like it's a 50-50 shot with him, but I think he offers the highest ceiling. So I think it was down to him and Jeudy for me. But I think I prefer the guy who could win the week for me.
And Bill, just before Drew gives his thoughts, I'm with you. I was stuck between Mike Williams and Jerry Jeudy myself. So yeah, that's a good one. Drew, maybe you break the tie. Maybe you just muddy the waters even more.
Yeah, I can take out the running backs pretty easily. Moss just isn't doing a whole lot, and Connor is he's touchdown dependent, right? So you're banking on him getting a couple of red zone carries. Sanders is tough because there's just so many options for the Bills, and you're not sure how that game script's going to go. So I think by default it comes down to those two, and Jeudy without Fant, so it'll be him and Sutton primarily, a little bit of Tim Patrick. We'll see what the running backs do. I think you give Mike Williams another shot. He's been so good this year. He's healthy. I definitely would rather have the guy catching passes from Justin Herbert than Teddy Bridgewater if I can help it. So I lean that way pretty strongly, I think. Even though he's kind of a big play guy, like Bill said, another time or another person that can go for big yardage and a couple of scores any given week. So I think I lean Williams as well. I don't fault you if you want to give Jeudy a shot. I mean, I love Jeudy coming out of Alabama and seeing him go there. And hopefully he can get back on track and do some good things. But yeah, I'll go with the guy that's done it this season.
Yeah, and we should do a poll after the show's over and see what the people think. See if they would want to start Mike Williams and Jerry Jeudy in their flex. I actually think the Mike Williams side would win in a poll. But I mean, I could be wrong. I'm always wrong about polls and stuff like that. So who knows? But I do think Mike Williams would win a poll. But I'd be interested to see what the percentages were on that and see if it's close or if people are still on the Mike Williams bandwagon. It's I know he's had a couple of down weeks, but I mean that Eagles matchup is good too. It's not like the Eagles are a world-class defense either. So that I think that helps out as well. But hey, on our way out, let's grab this question from Michael Chapp here. Michael's question: hey guys, I have Herbert, Dalvin, His RB2 is Zack Moss. He has Myles Gaskin, Kyle Pitts, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Hollywood Brown. He's 3-5. Should he look to make a trade or stay put? I guess it all depends on what the trade is. You know what I mean? Like, are you 3-5 and you're the second highest scoring team in your league, or are you 3-5 and you're the second lowest scoring team in your league? Those, I think that could dictate the type of trade you make. Um, Bill asked a good question too. Is this season long, or is this dynasty? I'm guessing it. I shouldn't say I'm guessing it's dynasty, because trades are made in redraft leagues, even though they don't happen as often. To upgrade. Okay, so Mike said it would be to upgrade his running back too.
Yes.
Yeah, you have some pieces. Hollywood should be able to get you something better than Zack Moss, or Myles Gaskin. You know what I mean? If you just want to make a slight bump. He said he's currently a playoff team at 3-5. Okay. 12-man PPR redraft. Okay, redraft. So, honestly, I would trade any of those receivers for an upgrade at running back, because like Bill said, and I agree with Bill 100% every time he says this, like once you get outside of like the top 5 to 8 wide receivers, that RB10 to RB40 is a lot of sameness, and you can probably replace those guys with something of similar value, maybe not the exact same value, but yeah, in a redraft I would trade any of those wide receivers to try to get a running back. Or if somebody is high on Pitts and you can get an upgrade at your RB2 and take a downgrade at tight end, I would do that as well. So yeah, make the trade. Make your starting lineup the best it can possibly be.
I'm looking at for redraft, I'm taking Keenan Allen and Myles Gaskin, and I'm seeing what the best running back that I can get. Maybe it's somebody like you're hoping to get Monty or Kareem Hunt coming off injury soon, because then you can keep a bunch of guys like Diggs, Hollywood, Moss. They've all had their bye at this point. Pitts has had his bye. So that way you're maximizing points every single week as well. So I would try to move guys that have buys to come in redraft. And, if you can get some name recognition for Keenan Allen and hope maybe somebody believes in Gaskin, or, they just want a depth piece because maybe they're overloaded at running back and they need wide receiver help. So I would be looking to package Gaskin and Keenan together to get an upgrade at running back too for yourself. And ideally somebody that maybe is, off their bye already. I don't know whose play that would be a realistic target. You're looking at like guys like Zeke, which you're probably not getting Zeke for that.
That's so hard to answer, honestly. Because you're in such a small economy like that, there's only going to be a handful of players that are even available to you, especially in redrafts. So you're going to have to knock on doors and just hope somebody answers, because the likelihood of that is slim to none anyway. So I don't hate your roster the way it is. Your playoff team, I typically play this way, where I usually have a one running back, and then my second running back's usually a crapshoot a little bit. So I don't mind how it's set up right now. And so I wouldn't be too aggressive and just making your lineup look pretty, because I'm happy with those wide receivers. Hollywood has a lot of upside if he could catch the ball. Diggs is an elite wide receiver, and Keenan, he's done it for what, 7 years now. So it's just, I agree. I think Keenan's the guy I move if I'm going to. for wide receivers. But yeah, I mean, I'm not getting too aggressive, honestly, because I'm comfortable with a weaker RB2.
And check that waiver wire. I mean, we've been seeing, guys like Adrian Peterson. I mean, Adrian Peterson probably went for a ton of fab in your redraft league, but keep grinding away because I mean, we can talk about all the guys that have kind of come up. Elijah Mitchell was a guy that we spent fab on. That's probably right now, an upgrade to Zack Moss. AP. I don't know if he's going to be an upgrade, but he's a guy too. If you're looking to go that trade route, like I think this might be the highest sell point you get on AP because what a lot of people haven't mentioned is the Titans play the Rams this week, who just traded for Von Miller, who still have Aaron Donald, who still they know how to stop the run, So, not I don't know if that's going to be the coming out party we all are hoping for Adrian Peterson. So he might be a guy right now that everyone is kind of excited about because the Titans worked him out, signed him 3 hours later, and didn't look at anyone else. So we're kind of, AP's got it, And I've even heard people say, they have similar running styles. And I'm like, yeah, but AP is like 36. They may have in their prime had similar running styles, but AP's not in his prime anymore. So, but look for those guys, maybe maybe try to pick up a Mark Ingram and see if things go his way with Taysom Hill, and who knows, people are talking about the Saints may be putting in a call at some point to Phillip Rivers, who knows at that point, Phillip Rivers, the check down king, So yeah, keep your eyes open and work that waiver wire too, because I'm sure as much as we think Derrick Henry is going to be the last running back injured, he's not, unfortunately. We're probably going to see a couple of more names that we wish didn't get hurt. And, I don't know. Here's the name. Drew brought up Montgomery, which, I mean, he read my mind because when he started talking about Keenan Allen, the first name that popped into my mind was David Montgomery. Not sure if your redraft league has IR spots, but if they don't, maybe add CEH if he had to get dropped because of bipocalypse or something like that. And then he gets kind of pushed down the waiver wire because he's projected for 0 points and people forget about him. Check out those injured guys and see if any of them are hanging out on the waiver wire because they won't help you this week, but they could help you going into the playoffs and as you are on the playoff push. So I think that's it. Do you guys have anything else? Nope. All right. I think that is the end of our story. So
good show, guys.
Good. Oh, look at that. Drew getting us with a good show at the end of the day. So good show to us, but thank you to everybody in the chat. I mean, it's so much fun when we get the questions. We get to throw them up here. We get to think them out together and try to figure it out. Thank you to those listening on the podcast. Appreciate it. No matter what, if you're on YouTube or your podcast directory, remember to subscribe. YouTube, hit the bell so you know when we go live. Podcast people, leave a rate and review. It helps us out. It helps us get seen by more people. And they're always fun to read for the most part, the reviews. So on that note, Bill, we are out of here.
Late.